Hello, my name is Ben,
And my name's Josh.
and welcome back to FPL Graduates, and welcome back to another video. The dust is finally settling on game week 1, and we can have a look now at some players that we're potentially looking at on our watch list.
Yeah, one massive caveat to this is that everyone is looking at these players who've stormed game week 1. They're going to be the best players this season. Just pump the brakes a little bit. You might not want to get them in this game week, but they're good to keep an eye on. And then you can watch them this weekend coming up and seeing if they're actually going to sustain this level of form, or are they just going to fall off a cliff?
Yeah, it's a watch list for a reason, guys. And remember, game week 1 has just settled. We've only had 1 week of real sort of data and knowledge on these players. So much can change in the next week because we double our data set. So we just got to bear that in mind when looking at our watch list and looking at our players. This at the moment is based on 1 game week.
So coming up first on our watch list, it's obviously got to be this man, DARWIN NUNEZ. Obviously came on as a substitute against Fulham, which we pretty much all expected. I don't think a lot of people thought he would start. And what an impact he made. Got a goal, got an assist. 23% owned now. He's rising quite quickly. Obviously, everyone wants to get on him. £9 million for a Liverpool forward in arguably the best attack in the league. What was your thoughts on him after that lunchtime kickoff, Ben?
I was very impressed. He almost sort of had a point to prove after being on the bench on Saturday against Fulham. And for me, again, like this guy could be a really good player in the next couple of game weeks. But for a lot of people, we're already on a triple Liverpool sort of assets, and they're for the defenders and midfielders only. So with this guy, a lot of people are going to struggle to get him in within 1 transfer. So for me, it's probably more sensible to bring him in on a free transfer in 2 transfers. So whether that be game week 2, 3, 4, I think that's the most sensible thing to do with this guy. So over the next sort of couple of games, Crystal Palace, Manchester United, we may get a better indication of how he does against potentially like a low block against another sort of top quality opposition in Manchester United. We'll say that loosely because Manchester United didn't look good in the opening game. But yeah, we get a good sort of data set from those first 3 games. So we get to see really what DARWIN is about and whether it's worth jumping off sort of double Liverpool defence or double Liverpool midfield to do so.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people commenting saying, should I get rid of Robbo? Should I get rid of Trent? Like we've said about 5 times already this video. It's 1 game, and I wouldn't jump off them just yet. I'm sure they'll get the returns that we all expect them to get. NUNEZ, though, he does look bright. £9 million. My only issue is with him is that when Diogo Jota comes back into the team, I think we'll still see a race for minutes between those two, and you still got Firmino there too. So there's almost like 3 players that can play in his position. So it'll be interesting to see whether he can perform well enough to stay in that team.
Okay, so next up, we're going for another guy whose ownership is rapidly rising. And by the time the video's out, his ownership's probably going to be a little bit higher than 12.6%. Is ALEKSANDAR MITROVIC of Fulham. He surprised all of us. And I think Fulham surprised us in the first game of the season with how they performed. He grabbed 2 goals from an XG of 0.95, which is very good, very prolific. Had 2 chances, 2 goals, and that is that. I mean, next to a decent, it's a difficult run after that. So it may be, again, a wait and see. He's already risen in price as well. So you're going to have to bear that in mind if you're looking to bring him in.
Yeah, and obviously one of those goals was a penalty as well, so his XG might be slightly inflated a little bit. But Fulham in that first half crossed the ball 14 times against Liverpool, which is very good numbers for him. Seems like the team is just well set up for him to get goals. And we love those talismanic figures in smaller FPL teams, like Fulham, for example. Like Ben mentioned, though, the fixtures are a bit tough after game week 3. So if you are hopping on him, you need to hop on him now. So if you've got like maybe a 7 mil striker that you're not too happy on, something like that, I'd maybe look at doing the transfer. But if you're on like Jesus or someone who's got very good fixtures for about the next 7 game weeks, I wouldn't be so keen. This is a very punty transfer, and it could work out that Mitrovic blanks for the next 2. So yeah, I'd probably wait and see with Mitrovic. I think it's a great first game. Don't get me wrong. But will he be able to sustain that against, teams that are going to sit back and defend against this Fulham side? So the third player on our watch list is Jack Harrison. Leeds in general going forward in the game week 1 look really good. I know a lot of people are a big fan of Harrison, who is 0.5 cheaper than Harrison. Harrison is getting confusing. But yeah, he obviously nearly got a goal, got ruled out for it. Well, it got given as an own goal in the end. But yeah, Harrison looks really good. 1.1% owned, so he's a massive differential. He created 2 big chances in that game, an XA of 1, which is crazy for one game, to be fair. What's your thoughts on Harrison, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, he produced very well in game week 1 and came away with that assist as well, which is very much deserved. Again, I think, Leeds are an unknown entity somewhat with the amount of transfers they've made. They've made some decent transfers as well. They looked very much better than they did in the back end of last season. So I anticipate that a few people are going to jump on the Leeds United assets. And probably Aronson is the guy that a lot of people look to for 0.5 cheaper. But for 6 million, you've got a known player in Jack Harrison. You know what you're going to get out of him. And, if a couple of those players, a couple of those teams, in game week 5 and 6 that Leeds have got don't look too good and look like they're conceding, which they are doing, Everton and Brentford, we could see Leeds do well in those fixtures. So it's worth keeping an eye on. Definitely to see how they do against Southampton away. I'll definitely be watching that and seeing how Leeds get on, because Southampton equally didn't look too good either in the opening day of the season, especially defensively. So let's see if Leeds can crack them open.
Yeah, another thing you got to be wary about with these Leeds attackers is that they have a lot of depth now, which is something we're not used to with Leeds. They've got Harrison, James. I know Sinisterra is injured, but you potentially got him to come back too. So there's a lot of competition for places, which is a good thing, I think, for Leeds in general. I think we'll see a lot of better performances from these attackers, but be wary that they could be substituted in and out when Dan James obviously is back from suspension game week 2 and when Sinisterra is back from his injury.
So as we can see, next we got Marcus Tavernier from Bournemouth. And again, it's a guy with some tough fixtures coming up. Man City and Liverpool away in their next 3 game weeks. So we could see sort of a lot of people waiting on the Bournemouth assets. I know I am. We've only seen them against an Aston Villa team that have looked relatively poor in that first game of the season. They impressed in pre-season, didn't do too well against Bournemouth at all. Very underwhelming. But he did have 86 minutes and an XA of 0.48, which if he can continue to keep that up over sort of the game weeks where he's playing tougher teams, that would be exceptional numbers to put up, especially for a team in the bottom half. Josh, what do you think of Marcus Tavernier? Is he one that you're potentially looking to go for as a 5 million enabler?
Yeah, I think it's interesting to keep an eye on him if you've got Leon Bailey in your team or a £5 million midfielder. I think there's quite a bit of competition in that price point, which was unexpected at the start of the season. Tavernier is on all set pieces. He was on all corners at least in that Villa game, which is interesting because we saw Bournemouth score from a corner and they're quite decent from set pieces in general. So, he's one to keep an eye on. 5 million. He should be playing most of the minutes as expected. Obviously, those next 3 are probably 3 of the worst fixtures you could probably cherry pick in the league. So I wouldn't get him right now. But, after that, Bournemouth fixtures from game week 5 to I think game week 10, maybe, if not longer, are very nice and all green. So, potentially if you hop off Leon Bailey at game week 3 or if you can bench him for game week 4, you could then look at maybe Tavernier as an option. Obviously, Dewsbury Hall also scored at last weekend with Leicester at £5 million. That's a very low XG shot. It was a very nice goal, don't get me wrong, but I don't see him doing that every week. So it'd be interesting. I think, this £5 million bracket is generally an area that you might be able to benefit if you can hop on and off the right players. So next up, and our final player on our watch list this week is going to be Phil Foden. Obviously, didn't play with Man City in pre-season, started against West Ham quite shockingly. I think a lot of people expected Mahrez to play. Played 88 minutes, 6.4% owned. Didn't get a return against West Ham, but he did look good. And so did Jack Grealish. I think both of these guys, if they are going to play the majority of the minutes, same with Mahrez, to be honest, are going to be interesting assets. What's your thoughts on the whole Manchester City midfield, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to make a transfer this week, which I still may do, I'm very undecided on whether I am going to. It'd probably to get in one of these Manchester City midfielders for the next at least 3 fixtures coming up, and it's basically sort of punting on who you think is going to do well. And Foden, he looked decent against West Ham, produced some decent statistics like an XA of 0.46 is decent. for what we're looking at. We may see the regression of expected goal involvement from the City midfielders, just due to Haaland taking a lot of those chances and him being the focal point of the City attack. But for me, it's definitely one to look out for. And if you're at the moment, I'm on Kulusevski, and I could easily take a 1 week punt on someone like Phil Foden or Amara, something like that, to attack the game week. So it's definitely one to keep an eye out. Let's keep an eye out on the press conferences with Pep and see if we can gain any more information, because it would definitely be interesting to see which City midfielder may be playing. But it's a punt, and it's definitely a reason why he's on a watch list. So yeah, I think decent, but unknown as well.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I thought Jack Grealish, on the other hand, I haven't obviously got his stats here, but they are very similar to Foden, really low XG, about the similar XA sort of thing. We saw City obviously implement that new system with Haaland in there, and we saw the eights really push up with Haaland, and almost, the wingers sort of drop back a little bit with Foden and Grealish, which allowed them to progress the ball forward. So it's interesting. I think Gundogan or Bernardo Silva, potentially alongside De Bruyne, could get some decent points potentially this season if they're, going to be almost acting as a second striker to Haaland. We'll have to wait and see with that. Obviously, it's only one game. That might just be for the West Ham game that they lined up like that. But I think, yeah, having a City midfielder and trying to pick the right one for this game week could be worth the risk against Bournemouth at home. Everyone's going to have Haaland. Everyone's going to be captaining realistically. So getting a little differential in there, whether it be Foden, Grealish, Mahrez, Gundogan, I think it could be a very, very good idea if you've got the flexibility to do so with a strong bench, just to say if they don't play.
So that rounds up our weekly watch list, guys. We hope you enjoyed. There are some players in there that we're keeping an eye out on. There some fantastic performances in game week 1. We saw the likes of Kulusevski come away with a 13-pointer. I know I mentioned him right at the end of the video, but he looked very, very decent. You had Castagna, a fullback, playing basically left mid for Leicester and getting a goal headed in from a corner. So there are a few decent options that we've got to keep wary on our watch list. The recommendation, though, for us right now is to not make any rash decisions or transfers. It may be invaluable to hold that free transfer this week for game week 2 and beyond.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. If you have anyone that you think could be on a watch list, comment them down below and we'll get back to you with what our thoughts are on that player.
Yeah, and as usual, please remember to like the video, subscribe to us, and follow us on all of our socials. And as per usual, I've been Ben.
I've been Josh.
And we'll see you guys
later. Have a good game week, everyone.